Hello, everyone, welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something that might sting. Why are so many men today sitting in silent rooms, staring at glowing screens, feeling a deep ache in their chest they can't explain? Because loneliness is not about being alone. It's about being unseen, unheard, and unvalued. You've been told that men should be strong, stoic, and silent. But what they didn't tell you is that silence can eat you alive. The truth is, millions of men in America, the UK, and Canada wake up every day and put on a mask of strength, while inside they are carrying a mountain of emptiness. And here's the part that nobody dares to say out loud. Your behaviors, yes, the small choices you repeat daily, are quietly building walls around you, brick by brick, until no one can reach you, not even the people who once tried to care. Think back to the last time someone asked how you were doing. Did you brush it off with "I'm fine"? Did you shut the door before the conversation even began? That might feel like protecting yourself, but it's actually pushing people away. Men don't realize that loneliness is not an accident. It's a consequence of behaviors we've been programmed to think are normal. The scariest part? You don't notice these behaviors until it's too late, until your phone barely rings, until Friday nights feel heavier, until you catch yourself wondering if anyone would even notice if you disappeared for a while. Society tells you to chase money, status, and women, but none of that fills the void if you've built your life on habits that isolate you. Loneliness is not solved by scrolling, by hookups, or by pretending you don't care. It's solved by recognizing what's poisoning you from within and courageously changing it. Every man watching this has felt that quiet, gnawing hunger for connection, the kind that keeps you awake at night when the world is asleep. But most won't admit it. That's why I'm here, to expose the 6 hidden behaviors that are slowly pulling men into the darkness of loneliness. If you're brave enough to face them, you can break free. If not, you'll continue to live in the shadows, wondering why nothing ever changes. And I promise you, by the time you hear them all, you'll never look at your own life the same way again. You see, the first behavior that leads men into crushing loneliness is emotional shutdown. From the time you were a boy, people told you to toughen up, to stop crying, to man up. And little by little, you learned to swallow your feelings until they turned into stones inside your chest. Now, as a man, when someone asks how you feel, you can't even find the words. You've buried them so deep that even you can't reach them anymore. And here's the brutal truth. When you cut yourself off from your own emotions, you cut everyone else off too. People don't feel close to stone walls. They feel close to those who let their hearts show. But here's where it gets worse. Emotional shutdown doesn't just hurt your relationships, it erodes your sense of self. You start confusing numbness with strength, silence with control. But inside, you're shrinking. And nobody knows because you've become a master at pretending. Maybe you laugh at the right times, maybe you nod and smile. But nobody truly knows you because you won't let them. And when nobody knows you, how can anyone love the real you? That's the root of loneliness. You've locked your authentic self in a cage, and now you wonder why nobody visits. Think about it. How many times have you walked away from someone who tried to connect with you because you felt uncomfortable? How many women stopped trying to get closer because you refused to open up? How many friendships died, not because people didn't care, but because you gave them nothing to hold on to? Emotional shutdown is a slow poison. It doesn't kill your relationships in one big explosion. It drains them drop by drop until one day you wake up and realize you're surrounded by silence. And let's be honest, silence is loud when you're alone. It screams at you in the middle of the night. It whispers to you when you're scrolling through pictures of other people's lives. It echoes when you see couples laughing or friends embracing. And the worst part, you tell yourself you don't need anyone. That's the lie that keeps men stuck. You do need connection. You do need love. You do need brotherhood. Admitting that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But until you break this habit of shutting down, loneliness will follow you like a shadow you can't outrun. The second behavior that slowly traps men in loneliness is isolation through pride. Men are taught to believe they should carry everything on their own shoulders, that asking for help is weakness, that leaning on someone makes you less of a man. But let me tell you a truth that will shake you. Pride is not strength. Pride is prison. You convince yourself that no one could possibly understand your struggles, so you keep them locked inside. You build this fortress around your life, telling yourself it's protection, when in reality, it's a cage you can't escape from. Here's the dangerous part. Your pride doesn't just keep others out, it keeps you in. You miss out on real friendships because pride tells you that you can't be vulnerable. You miss out on healthy relationships because pride tells you that admitting your fears makes you unattractive. You even sabotage opportunities because pride whispers that rejection would be unbearable. And every time you listen to that voice, you shrink your own world smaller and smaller until it's just you and your loneliness. Think about it. How many times have you been struggling silently but refused to reach out? How many times have you been broke, depressed, or heartbroken, but told everyone, "I'm good, I'll handle it"? You think people respect you more when you stand alone, but what they actually feel is distance. And over time, that distance turns into disappearance. Friends stop calling, partners stop caring, because they feel useless, unwanted, unnecessary in your life. Pride convinces you they left, when in reality, you pushed them away. And here's the cold reality. Men who isolate themselves out of pride don't realize the cost until it's too late. Loneliness creeps in like a thief, and suddenly, you're sitting in a quiet apartment, scrolling through memories of times when people were around you, but you never let them in. The truth is, people can't support a man who refuses to let them. They can't love someone who always insists he's fine. They can't fight for someone who won't admit he's hurting. Pride feels powerful in the moment, but it leaves you powerless in the end. Loneliness doesn't come from being unwanted. It often comes from being unapproachable. And until you humble yourself enough to say, "I need connection, I need people," you'll remain locked in that cage, staring at walls you built with your own two hands. The third behavior that drives men into loneliness is neglecting their friendships. For so many men, the moment they get busy with work, relationships, or chasing goals, friendships are the first thing to die. You stop calling, you stop showing up, you stop making time. And at first, it feels normal. Life gets hectic, responsibilities pile up. But then years pass, and one day you realize the people who once knew you best have drifted so far that they're strangers. This isn't just distance, it's erosion. You didn't lose your friends all at once. You let them fade away, one ignored text, one missed meetup, one maybe later at a time. Men underestimate how vital friendships are. Your male friendships aren't just casual, they are oxygen. They give you laughter, perspective, and a sense of belonging. Yet most men treat friendships as optional, like something they'll get back to later. But later never comes. And when life hits you hard, when heartbreak shatters you, when stress breaks you down, when you need someone to remind you who you are, you realize you have no one to call. That is loneliness at its sharpest, not having a single person who truly knows your soul. And it gets worse. Friendship is one of the first things women notice about men. A man without close friends doesn't just seem lonely, he seems unsafe, like a man without a tribe. Women instinctively know that a man who invests in his friendships is a man who can invest in a relationship. But when you isolate yourself, when you let your friendships rot, you send a silent signal. I am an island. And islands are beautiful from afar, but desolate up close. Think about how many connections you've lost, not because they betrayed you, but because you simply stopped nurturing the bond. You told yourself you didn't need anyone, but the truth is, every man needs a brotherhood. Without it, you carry the weight of life alone, and no one was built for that. The loneliest men aren't the ones who got rejected. They're the ones who never bothered to keep their friendships alive. And the tragedy is, most don't realize it until they're older, sitting in quiet houses, wondering why nobody calls anymore. The truth? Friendship isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline. And when you neglect it, you're not just losing friends, you're losing pieces of yourself. The fourth behavior leading men into deep loneliness is escaping into distractions instead of facing reality. Every time you bury yourself in endless scrolling, video games, casual hookups, or even constant work, you're numbing the very pain that's trying to tell you something is wrong. Distractions feel safe because they keep your mind busy, but they also keep your heart empty. And here's the brutal truth. Loneliness grows in silence, but it thrives in avoidance. When you choose distraction over connection, you're choosing to abandon yourself. Let's be real. You've probably had nights where you spent hours on your phone, refreshing feeds, watching other people live, while your own life quietly slips away. Or maybe you've drowned your loneliness in alcohol, or stayed in toxic cycles of casual intimacy, because at least it felt like someone was there, even if it was empty. But at the end of the night, the distraction fades, and you're left staring at the ceiling, feeling the same ache. That's because loneliness can't be escaped. It can only be healed. And healing never happens in avoidance. The most dangerous part about distractions is that they disguise themselves as progress. You tell yourself you're working hard, grinding, building, but deep down, you know you're also hiding. You tell yourself you're just relaxing with games or content, but what you're really doing is silencing the voice inside that's begging you to reach out, to take risks, to build real connection. Every hour you spend avoiding the ache is another hour you train your brain to live without intimacy, without depth, without people. And over time, you forget what connection even feels like. Men fall into this trap because distractions give you control, while people bring uncertainty. But life without uncertainty is life without meaning. Real connection will challenge you, frustrate you, sometimes even break your heart. But it will also give you something no screen, no game, no quick fix ever will: belonging. And belonging is the antidote to loneliness. If you keep choosing the numbness of distractions, you will wake up one day and realize you've built a life full of noise, but empty of love. That is the quiet tragedy of modern men, living surrounded by entertainment, yet starved of intimacy. Loneliness doesn't always look like darkness. Sometimes it looks like endless light from a glowing screen that never warms your soul. The fifth behavior pulling men into loneliness is self-neglect. And this one is brutal because it creeps in silently. When a man stops taking care of himself, his body, his appearance, his environment, he doesn't just lose discipline, he loses dignity. And without dignity, loneliness isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Because here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud, when you stop respecting yourself, others stop respecting you too. Think about it. When you look in the mirror and see a man who's let himself go, who doesn't care how he dresses, who doesn't fuel his body with strength, who doesn't maintain his space, you subconsciously send yourself the message, I'm not worth the effort. And that message bleeds into every interaction you have. People can feel when a man doesn't value himself. It's in his posture, his tone, his energy. And when people sense you don't value yourself, they're less likely to value you either. This is how loneliness spirals, not because you're unworthy of connection, but because you've convinced yourself you are. Self-neglect also feeds shame. And shame isolates. You start avoiding social situations because you don't feel good enough. You skip opportunities because you're embarrassed by how far you've slipped. You choose solitude, not because you want it, but because you fear judgment. And the cruel part is, the more you hide, the worse you feel. And the worse you feel, the more you neglect yourself. It's a vicious cycle that slowly strangles a man's spirit. But here's the deeper cut. Self-neglect is not just physical. It's mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual. When you stop feeding your mind with wisdom, stop fueling your soul with purpose, stop giving yourself reasons to wake up with fire, you become hollow. And hollow men are lonely men, because nobody can connect with a shell. People crave your spark, your vitality, your presence. But when you've abandoned yourself, you have nothing left to give. Loneliness doesn't always come from rejection. Sometimes it comes from self-abandonment. And until you decide you are worth the effort, worth the workout, worth the meal prep, worth the shower, worth the clean space, you will always feel disconnected because you're disconnected from yourself first. The hardest truth is this: how you treat yourself sets the standard for how the world treats you. The sixth behavior that cements men in loneliness is carrying bitterness and resentment like armor. Every time you've been betrayed, rejected, abandoned, or overlooked, you built scars. And instead of healing those scars, many men turn them into weapons. You start believing all women are the same, that friends can't be trusted, that people always disappoint. And so you harden, you put up walls, not just to protect yourself, but to punish the world for what it did to you. But here's the truth: resentment doesn't protect you, it poisons you. Every time you say, "I don't need anyone," you're not declaring strength, you're declaring hurt. Every time you roll your eyes at love, scoff at friendships, or dismiss the idea of vulnerability, you're not being wise, you're being wounded. And wounds left untreated don't just stay, they rot. That rot seeps into your energy, into your words, into your presence. People can feel it. They might not know why, but something about you feels heavy, unsafe, unapproachable. And slowly, they drift away. Not because you're unworthy, but because bitterness makes closeness impossible. Bitterness tells you it's better to be alone than to risk being hurt again. But what it doesn't tell you is that loneliness is its own kind of hurt. A hurt that spreads, a hurt that consumes. Resentment tricks you into believing you're protecting your heart, when really you're suffocating it. Because the truth is, connection requires risk. And if you're not willing to risk disappointment, you're not willing to experience joy either. Here's the most tragic part. So many men carry unspoken pain from childhood, from relationships, from failures, and instead of confronting it, they bury it. But buried pain doesn't disappear, it festers. And that festering pain becomes cynicism, and cynicism pushes everyone away. A man who carries bitterness will always be lonely, not because people don't want him, but because he refuses to let anyone in past his scars. The only way out of this prison is forgiveness, not for them, but for you. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let past pain dictate your future connection. It means saying, yes, I've been hurt, but I will not live the rest of my life alone because of it. Until you lay down the armor of bitterness, loneliness will always win. Now here's the hardest truth of all. Loneliness doesn't just happen to you, it grows from you. The 6 behaviors we've walked through: emotional shutdown, isolation through pride, neglecting friendships, escaping into distractions, self-neglect, and carrying bitterness, are choices. Small, daily choices that slowly starve you of the very thing you crave most: connection. And the painful reality is, most men never stop to see the pattern until the damage is already done. They wake up one day with grey hair, an empty house, and no one who truly knows their soul. That is the cost of ignoring these truths. But here's what I need you to understand. Loneliness is not destiny. It is not who you are. It is simply the result of behaviors you can change. And change starts the moment you stop lying to yourself. Stop telling yourself you're fine when you're not. Stop convincing yourself you don't need people when you do. Stop using pride, distractions, neglect, and resentment as shields. Because those shields are not saving you, they're suffocating you. You were not built to live in silence. You were not built to scroll your life away. You were not built to hide in bitterness or drown in numbness. You were built to connect, to give, to be seen and known. That is what makes life worth living. But no mentor, no partner, no friend can force that change on you. It starts with you deciding that your life will not be defined by isolation, that you will choose courage over comfort, vulnerability over pride, effort over neglect, healing over bitterness. So I ask you, look at your life right now. Which of these 6 behaviors are you guilty of? Which one is secretly building the walls around you? Be honest with yourself, because until you admit it, you cannot fix it. And I want you to answer this in the comments below. Which behavior do you see most in your life, and what are you going to do starting today to break it? If this video hit you hard, don't just keep it to yourself. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a brother, a friend, or a man you know who might be silently fighting this same battle. Because no man should have to fight loneliness alone. And maybe, just maybe, this message will be the spark that changes his life and yours.